Welcome to Compact Chat. My name is Tommy Stewart, and I'm a detective with Alabaster Police Department. I work full-time with Compact. At Compact, we focus on prevention, intervention, and education. So today, though, we're going to focus on mental health with our children. And we have a special guest here this morning, Miss Sherrita Drake, who I know by Rita, so if it's okay, I'm going to call you Rita.
That's fine.
All right. And today we're going, Rita is a social worker and a mental health coordinator for the Alabaster City School System. And today, Rita, I'd like to talk a little bit about the mental health issues our kids are dealing with in school. But before we get to that, I'd like to tell you thank you for being here.
No problem.
Taking your time out and coming and visiting with us today. So I prepared a few questions today that I'd like to cover and stuff like that and get your perspective on things.
Okay.
So how are you doing today, first of all?
I'm doing well. How are you,
Good,
Tommy?
doing well. So, all right, so first question is anxiety and depression is a big thing amongst our kids in school.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about that and let us know why it is that our kids are so anxious and depressed nowadays?
Well, I feel like it's always been there. It's nothing new. I feel like we are more aware as a society. You know, if you think back, even I was a child of the 80s. If you think back, my generation, even before me, it was the climate was, oh, they're children. You know, what do they got to worry about? What do they got to be sad about? Mm-hmm. But now, being more emotionally aware and educated, we know that's not true. They're little people. They have feelings just like anybody. So I feel that is one layer of it. We are just more aware of children's mental health nowadays. Mm-hmm. But then I also think it's different. They have things we didn't have back then. Right. They have the influence of social media. They have the stress of, you know, having very full and jam-packed little lives, be it with sports, be it with school, so social interaction. So I think that plays a big part of it. But I think more than anything, it's our awareness of it now, you know. So.
I noticed that also, speaking of that, like the time that I've been here at Compact, that's one thing that I've noticed a lot. And with that, I think it's important building relationships with these kids.
Yes.
And on those relationship aspects, can you tell me how important having a relationship with these kids are nowadays?
It's important to have a relationship with your children. If you can, your children's friends. The more positive contacts that a kid have, the more what we call their protective factors go up. They have people that they know they can go to. They have good influences. So just like any relationship, you should have some kind of relationship that is free for conversation, questions with your children, and that helps their mental health and their emotional growth as they get older too.
So also, speaking on some of those same terms, the one thing I've noticed coming in and talking to these kids as we build these relationships with them is some of the academic stress that they're under. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the academic world is all new, right? Especially the older they get, the more they feel stress. I say a lot of that comes from maybe, you know, their sports and activities that a lot of kids get into the older they get. So then they have to learn to manage their time between the academics and between sports, between groups. Also, too, you know, the older they get, the more harder things can become. Subject matter and just, you know, all around.
Well, I know I've been a parent for quite a long time now. I've been a father for about 42 years now. And I know that I'm learning still every day, even with my adult children, especially my grandchildren and stuff. So speaking of the relationship, how hard is it, as you find in your profession, that you see that our parents and kids are having a little bit of trouble trying to gain that relationship? And then how much do you see that sometimes, I know that I put added stress on our kids without realizing it. Like, we got to do good in school. You got to be top of your game in your sport and all those things like that. So how is it that we can be cognitive as parents to say, hey, we want you to do well and we want to see you succeed and we want to push you, but where's that fine line at, in your opinion?
So it's important to have expectations with your children, right? I expect you to go to school. I expect you to try the best you can, you know, but we do not want to look for perfection. Nobody's perfect. And so I feel like, one, having a relationship with your kid where they feel like they can come to you and talk to you about their struggles is key. I say doing that along the way, opens up your children to feel safe to come to you, even though you have expectations. So that might be at dinner. You're like, hey, tell me about your day. What are some of your successes at school? What were some of your hardships at school? Where do you feel like I can help you if you can't do it on your own? So along the way, when you make that a ritual in your home, they develop a relationship with you where they are feeling free to talk to you about the good and the bad, right? But then I also think that's the time for the parents to set realistic expectations with their children. Hey, I get it. That was a tough class. You can't skip class. We don't run away from things. How can we tackle it together? How can we help you make decisions that are good? So I think it's laying the groundwork where your children feel safe to come to you no matter what, keeping your expectations realistic and not being perfectionistic, and being okay with mistakes, saying we learn from them, and helping them problem solve. So it might be hand over hand in the beginning, let's problem solve together. But then once they start to get older and they are making better choices, is how you encourage them to go forward and problem solve for themselves.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because as a grandparent especially, I'm a grampy, not a grandparent, but I'm a grampy. And as a grampy, you know, talking to my grandchildren and stuff like that, trying to get them to talk is like pulling teeth.
Sometimes,
So can you give me some examples of how we can open up for open-ended conversation and stuff like that to get these kids? Because this is a typical reaction when, how was your day? Good. Or fine. And then it's like, okay, how was the weather in school today? You find yourself just all over the place. So what's a good way for some opening lines or some ways that we can stress our kids, hey, I need you to open up because I'm going to be here and ask you till you tell me something. So how do we do those things?
I think, one, starting early if you can. Having those kind of conversations in like elementary school. So it's not something new when they're in high school will help a lot. But let's say your kids are older and you're trying to do that now. It's just going to be what I call the stick to it. Like you got to stick to it. So say, hey, Tommy, how was your day? Good. Well, tell me 3 good things about your day.
Okay.
Have follow-up questions.
Yeah, okay.
Repeat things back to them. They're like, oh, wow, mom or dad were listening. But don't let the first fine or maybe dismissal from them be it.
Yeah.
Stick with it.
Yeah.
Follow up. Or maybe today they don't want to talk about it, but guess what? Tomorrow at dinner you try again. How was today?
All right.
Was it better than yesterday? Have questions. Maybe form your questions so it's not just yes, no, maybe, open it so they can give input. I would say also too, when they do start sharing, is how you respond. Are you responding negatively? Are you responding harshly? Or are you understanding? Do you say, okay, tell me more. Tell me more about it. And you sit and listen and you say, hey, I understand that was hard. What can we do?
Right.
We're a team.
Yeah.
Instead of, well, I told you don't hang out with Tommy. What can we do to help you?
Okay.
And that will make it so next time they're like, Mom and Dad are pretty comfortable with me telling them stuff. I'm okay with sharing with them.
Because I know too that with kids, because I was a kid one time, believe it or not, about 100 years or so ago. But seriously, there would be some things I would just never tell my parents, even though they say we're open to that. So the kids that we see as parents that we know that they're struggling with something, but they're not wanting to open up, how would you dig a little deeper, I guess, so to speak, to try to get them to understand?
I think,
or get them to believe that you understand where they're coming from.
I think initially if you are asking questions and they are just being hesitant and they're not opening up, it's okay for you to also call out what you're seeing. Hey, I know you said things are fine, but it didn't look fine. They're telling me you're doing this at school or you're coming home and you're not being yourself. It's okay to call out things that you're seeing. And then in that moment, maybe they will open up to you or maybe they won't. But the main thing you can do in those situations is just to say, hey, well, when you're ready to talk about it, I'm here for you. Thing is, though, you have to follow up with that. So if it's in the middle of the night and they want to talk to you about it, you need to make time for it. And that's how you get the relationship to flow the way you want it to and find out things.
I gotcha. So I noticed that with me, for instance, I'll use myself as an example. my wife tells me I have that look. And that look, I still try to figure it out, but evidently I have that look, right? But with our kids, I think they read our body language a lot.
Yeah.
And I noticed that sometimes kids will just kind of throw something out to test the water, so to speak. So what are some ideas or things that you can give to our parents that when those things happen, rather than just reacting like, oh my gosh, what's some other reactions that we could have to those responses?
I'm a social worker. I've had many of those moments. You know, out of nowhere, I get dropped like a chunk of information. And so, one, I go in knowing that it's a possibility when I'm talking to a kid. Two, I also have what I call my game face. You know, I'm not going to or overact. It's like, okay, you know, you shared that with me. Thank you. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the good, the bad, whatever we need to talk about. I do believe it's in the reaction. Sometimes they are wanting to share, maybe because of stigma, maybe because of fear. They're not really telling you what they're feeling or what their emotions are. And they will throw something out there just to see how you react to it. Are you going to judge me? Are you going to, you know, explode on me and fuss and ground me? You know, they are testing you sometimes. So the best thing you can do is stay calm. And if you don't know the answer, say, I don't know that answer. Let's look it up together. Let's find it out together. But it's all in your response, body language wise and verbally.
Okay. So saying that, as parents, who can we look to help us, guide us through those issues? I know here at Compact, we do a lot of education, and education prevention go hand in hand. But the interventions is where we actually connect with the parents and the child. And sometimes we're able to bridge that gap. So other than, I know because Shelby County just has a plethora of resources, and Compact being one of those. Our relationship with Alabaster City Schools is great. And you and I go back and forth, you know, I refer to you, you refer to me, we work together on these things and stuff like that. So how can a parent reach out if they need assistance with something like that?
So if your child is coming to you and sharing things that are concerning, maybe they have some anxiety, maybe they're having some depression, maybe it's a friend, or maybe there's some substance use. Once they share that stuff with you, it's important to get them in with a professional. So when it comes to Alabaster City Schools, myself and our counselors are usually the go-to. So I am always there to find resources to help make connections with counselors and to give families feedback. But any school system will be able to do the same. Shelby County has a version of me. Pelham City Schools has a version of me. But if you need mental health help for your student, you can always go to your school counselor and they can connect you with the me of your system.
All right, very good.
If you don't feel like you want to take it to the school, you could always go online. What did we do before Google?
Exactly.
You can go online and look up counselors around you, and you will see numerous sites come up where they even tell you what they specialize in. If insurance is something that's keeping the parents from getting the kids into somebody, you can always call the back of your insurance card and they'll tell you exactly who they'll pay for and who's in their network. But if nothing else, like I said, reach out to the school counselor. We're there for that. I'm there for that main reason. And we can always guide you into the direction you need to go to.
So I have to mention this because it's so relevant, I think, in today's society, is that there's a certain stigma that goes along with the mental health.
Yes.
Especially with our younger people and even our families. And unfortunately, people associate mental health issues with, you know, this big bad monster or something. But how is it so important that we try to break that stigma of the mental health?
Mental health is health. I think that's always been my big go-to. It's like, oh, well, if you had high blood pressure, would you not take your medicine because people knew about it? No. Same thing with mental health. Would you turn down treatment for something that's health-related if it helps you? So mental health is health. But stigma is a thing. I have seen the stigma come and go. over certain topics or over certain diagnosis. But what I like about these current young generations, I feel like the stigma is lessening. If you look at, I said social media before, but it also has its positive things.
Yeah.
If you look at TikTok and social media now, there are tons of influencers and people that your kids are watching who are sharing their own mental health struggles.
Right.
And some of these kids will openly talk to you like, oh yeah, I have a counselor, blah, 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 blah. I think the stigma's getting better.
Yeah.
I think the main thing we can do to fight stigma is to talk about it. Hey, you have depression. It's okay. How can we get you help with that? How can you live a life even though you have depression? It doesn't have to end things. So I think the stigma will slowly go down the more we are open to talking about it in our families, with our friend groups. Some churches are doing mental health outreach information. I think the more we get it out there, the more stigma will decrease.
Okay. So following up on that a little bit, if a parent does reach out to you or one of us or whatever school system that you may be in or anything else, is there a level of confidence that goes with that, the confidentiality and things like that?
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So if you reach out to the school, we have to keep everything confidential unless, we have like a few things like if it's abuse or neglect, then we have to report it because we're mandated reporters. But when it comes to linking your family to a counselor, I tell nobody else about that. Right. And then if I am the person that helps link you to it, they don't tell me anything after that.
Okay.
So I am simply there to help you. And then the whole privacy that goes with HIPAA and FERPA for the schools still is intact. So we do not put out there that we've had to help.
Yeah, I think that you mentioned that. I have to follow up just a hair, but I think everybody understands what HIPAA is. But can you talk about FERPA? What exactly that means?
FERPA is the HIPAA for schools.
Okay.
So HIPAA is more medical laws and privacy. FERPA is for the schools.
Okay.
So it's a little different because if you're an enrolling parent, we can tell you certain things that maybe HIPAA doesn't address or wouldn't allow, but they are basically the same thing, just for different entities.
Okay. So let's transition a little bit and talk about this. Let's say we've established that we may have some mental health issues and stuff like that. How important is it to have a healthy routine? And talk a little bit about what we can do or what is a healthy routine.
Healthy routines are important whether you are struggling with mental illness or not, especially for children. So it can be having a healthy sleep routine, a healthy after school routine. So, sleep is restorative. Even though we might not be conscious, our brains are doing the work to get us ready for the next day. So having a routine is essential, especially for younger kids. Hey, we come home, we have a snack, we do our homework, we might maybe have a dinner as a family, play a little bit, then we go to bed. Same thing for kids with medicine. Maybe they're having to take medicine for like ADHD or something like that. A routine is also good for them because that helps them, one, remember, because we're building habits for adult you, right, to take their medicine, but also, two, it helps you not miss and skip. But a routine is important either way.
Okay. So we've talked a lot about, you and I together have talked a lot about ways that parents can establish that relationship. And we've discussed that here today. I'd like to try to wind this up a little bit just by talking about how we can connect with those kids on a deeper level. We kind of hit on that, but I know that one of my granddaughters actually tells me, me and Grampy get in trouble together, and things like that. So we've established a relationship that she feels like she can really open up to me and things like that, because I know that with parents, I've established something at Compact that I tell a lot of our parents, which is that parenting, I think, is 90% negotiable and 10% non-negotiables. So talking about that 10% non-negotiables, the rules that you mentioned earlier, established early on, these are the guidelines that we have to go by. So leaving this today on a positive note, what are some of that 10%ers that we should put in to say, hey, let's establish these goals? It's something that you and I can both work with. We can negotiate on them a little bit. But at the end of the day, this 10% is non-negotiable. Can we talk a little bit about that?
I think your non-negotiables should be things like we attend school every day. We don't do big secrets, and then define to them what the secrets are that are off limits. Like if somebody's offering you drugs, if somebody does something that makes you feel uncomfortable, those are our non-negotiables that I want you to talk to me about. So I say when it comes to non-negotiables, it should be the big things. Like, hey, I'm always up to talk about it, but this is my expectations. We go to school every day. We do what we're supposed to. We try our best. We're not looking for perfection, just your best that you can do. So you try your best. But those are the non-negotiable kind of things.
Okay.
And, I think sometimes kids are going to mess up because that's how they learn.
Sure.
And that's how I would phrase it. Like, hey, it was a mistake, but that's how we learn. We don't repeat mistakes. We learn from them, and you go from there. So sometimes your non-negotiables might be broken, but that's as they develop and they're learning.
Right.
So as a parent, I think you need to be mindful of that. You can't expect perfection all the time, but they're to try their best and make it a learning experience.
Good, good. Well, Rita, I sure appreciate you being with us today.
No problem.
You've opened my eyes to a lot of stuff, and every time I talk with you, I learn something, and things
I'm
like
glad.
that. But I just want you guys to know that the things that we talked about here today are super important. The relationship that you have with your kids are super important. The relationship that Rita and have with your children are super important. And Rita represents Alabaster City Schools today. However, Rita's position as a mental health coordinator, if I'm not mistaken now, every major school system within the state, is that correct, are supposed to have mental health coordinators. So I urge you as parents to reach out if you need more information. If you're in the Alabaster City School System, I certainly can link you up with Rita. Or if you have a question about who to reach out to, you can contact us here at Compact, and we're here to help you. It certainly takes a village, and this is a huge part of our village right here, and I appreciate you, Rita, being here with us today.
No problem. And I will add, too, if you're in the Alabaster school system, every month I put out a newsletter for parents. So you can always, if you want to be on my mailing list, you can always reach out to your school counselor, and we cover various topics in that.
Okay.
So.
And this is the first and of many series to come, we hope, to educate your parents more, kind of give you an understanding, and we're all on the front lines to help you. Your child's future is important to us as well. So we hope you tune in again. Thanks for coming, and thanks for tuning in.